I wish that I'd been taught when I was at school. I'm an investor, a business owner, and a money educator. Understand it better, compound interest, cash flow, budgeting, investments, recover from debt. No one explained to me, put your money to work. It's about normalising the conversation.
Hey everybody, it's Sarah Poynton. Welcome back to the Money Mechanics podcast. I'm very excited to have you all here today. We're going to be joined by Matt Hall, who is the founder of Success School and a guy that I've known and followed online and met probably about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago now. I followed his journey. He spoke at one of my events in Milton Keynes for our business Cogito Wealth. And ever since, I followed his journey online, and I'm very excited to hear what he's got to say today, because we're going to talk about all things money, business, success, all of this sort of stuff, mindset. There'll be lots to talk about. So, Matt, do you want to introduce yourself? First of all, thank you for being here, obviously. But do you want to tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, and I was just thinking then, it has been a wild journey since that event.
Yeah.
It feels like a lifetime ago in some ways, because it's kind of like that compound effect has happened for me in my business. This last 2 years has felt like 20, like the amount that we've done and the amount that's happened. So I'm sure, it'd be nice to sort of reminisce on those last few years. But essentially, I'm an online business strategist that specializes in online launches. So we're talking when people want to go from that model of being an online service provider that's constantly trading their time for money, we're doing lots of one-to-one work for clients, those kinds of things. How can we then launch more kind of group programs like your memberships, courses, those kind of things? Like that's the thing I help people do, is stop having to do one-to-ones and go more one-to-many. And I flipping love it. I love helping people. I love the clients we've got right now, and I love just sharing. So anything that we can speak about today that can just give people insights into that. And obviously we'll talk a lot about money, but I'm all here for it.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that. So we'll start where we start with everybody, which is, what is your earliest memory of money?
My earliest memory is, as far as I can remember now, looking back, that not a lot of people around us had it. Like, I grew up in Bradford in the north of England, and it was the wealthy people, were those kind of people over there. It wasn't around us. It wasn't the norm. I think there was a lot of, they either got lucky if they had money, or they're greedy if they have it. I think there was a lot of those kind of attitudes around me, kind of, at school and just societally, I think, when you're growing up. I think my parents, I think, always worked really, really hard, always, and never had loads of money. But anything they did have, they would do everything they could to provide for me. So it's not like I had one of those rags to riches story, like, oh, poor me, I grew up with nothing and all that kind of stuff. That wasn't my journey. And basically my journey was two amazing, loving, incredible parents who did everything they could. But, my dad was a firefighter that had grown up in, a council estate, where for him, like, just having a stable, solid job and getting a good wage and doing good in the community was absolutely success for him. And my mum, a mobile hairdresser. But like, I just saw my mum constantly carrying bags around, like, to go from one house to the next, working so hard for that money. And I grew up like this kind of kid that wanted to perform, wanted to entertain everybody, wanted to make people laugh. And I think I saw it, that I could help them not have to work so hard by becoming rich and famous, that kind of naive young thing that so many of us thought would be the answer to everything. So yeah, I think reflecting, that's kind of the backdrop, if you want to call it, to kind of my mindset around money.
Did your parents talk to you about money?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was like this big taboo subject, but I also don't think it was a huge topic, to talk about all the time. I think as kids, we're quite receptive, like we pick up on stuff, and we do kind of, I mean, I don't know, this might have just been me, but you do read between the lines a little bit. And I think there was probably more just observing my parents and observing that they have to work really, really hard just to provide a quote unquote normal average life. But I don't think it was ever like this big taboo, like we can't talk about money. I just think I probably just observed it more.
And do you think that as a kid or in the world that you grew up, that you were learning about money enough to be able to understand how money works in the real world?
Absolutely not. No. And I think that is just so common for so many of us, isn't it? Like, we're just not a financially literate country or generally. And I think that's so sad. And, you know, sometimes when I have conversations on my podcast, different guests have different views. And, you know, I had one recently and she was like, I don't like to talk about money because I don't want to kind of like show off or make people feel inferior. And I kind of pushed back on that a little bit. And I said, but we have to talk about it, because if we don't educate people, and then we don't empower people. And I think that is societally a fundamental issue that we have. I always say it's like money and sex. These are the two things that we feel embarrassed about, that we don't openly talk about. And whenever there's a subject you don't talk about or feel embarrassed about, you can't get access to the right information and have healthy conversations. So I mean, I think the more that I've grown and the more that I've, you know, invested in self-education, I guess, as I've got older, the more I realize how much we are absolutely not taught about money at all, and how wrong that is. Like, because whether you hear people say like money is the root of all evil and all that, like whatever your views currently are on money, the reality is this: it's a big part of our of life. Like, that is how society functions. And if it's a big part of your life, if it affects your everyday, whatever that subject is, you probably need to know about it. Right. And that for me is just bonkers. And I really try, and as best as I can, I know it can feel crude to people that have been brought up with certain views on money, but I really try and make it a healthy, open conversation in, you know, my show and the kind of content that I do.
Amazing. So let's take us back a little bit to like before you had your business that you've got now. Like, I guess at some point, most people that have got businesses, there's a trigger point where you go, do you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to do this instead. What was yours, and where did that come from, and how did we end up here?
Okay, a very short interruption of the episode, so I want you to get back to listening. I just wanted to remind you that the Money Mechanics weekly newsletter is completely free, and we'll send this out to you every week. All you've got to do is find the link in the show notes and get signed up. When we send this out to you, this weekly newsletter is going to include things that will help you to become a better money mechanic. It could be things like what's happening in the markets, things like budgets, how that's going to impact you. And I'm also going to share a lot of insight into what I'm doing in my own portfolio and in the portfolios of the guests we've got on the podcast, to really just help you understand what you could do differently to make your money work as best as it can for you. Make sure you go and find that link and get signed up.
So I'm the stereotypical unemployable guy. 19 years old, I started my first business, and it was really just a natural opportunity that I just ran with. It wasn't that I grew up that kid that wanted to be an entrepreneur. You know, you hear all the stories of the lemonade stands at 11. None of that was me. I just wanted to be on stage, be a performer, make people laugh, whatever. And I joined a tribute band, as you know. I was in a Take That tribute band when I was 17. And effectively, the manager was just a horrible guy. He very much like led through fear and putting us down and telling us we were rubbish. And we hated working for him, but we loved the job. And I'd done like a couple of TV acting jobs at like 16, 17. I'm living with my parents. I've managed to build up a couple of grand in my savings. And I was just like, listen, if I could buy us some cheap speakers, start a website, is everyone in this band happy that we just leave this bugger and we just start on our own? And the good thing about it is that none of the lads were thinking entrepreneurial. They had no interest in building an empire and all these ambitions that I had back then. They just wanted a manager that they actually liked. And so they were totally like, there was no egos, because like I wasn't the lead singer, and it's like, well, who are you to be the boss kind of thing. There was none of that. There was just support of like, yeah, if you're happy to do that, Matt, let's go. And essentially that was me at 19 years old, starting a business, which then grew to have an agency with other singers, function bands, tribute acts. We ended up with over 500 acts on our books. we ended up in-house managing all these other bands, getting offices, rehearsal studios, vans, speakers, full-time staff, and it became an actual business.
Monster.
From a bit of a monster, yes. A hungry beast, as I call it, because it wasn't the most profitable business, but high turnover, high revenue. But I just did all my lessons through that first, I would say, 7-8 years of that business, because I literally knew nothing about business. I didn't know what VAT was. I didn't know, gross, net, all these kind of things that we take for granted now. As a 19-year-old with nobody in my family that's entrepreneurial, all I had was just delusion, kind of determination.
And
effort, willpower, right. That was it, as so many of us do.
Delusion and effort, I think, might be the two ingredients that launch more businesses than any other ingredients in the world.
If not everything, everything we ever know starts.
Delusion and effort. I got a lot of time for that.
That's the takeaway that everyone needs. And it really was. But the downside to that is lots and lots of tough years. Like, I'm talking years where we're turning over great money, but there's no money left for me at the end of the week. I'm talking trusting people that stole lots of money from me, hiring the wrong people that you then have to let go. All the stuff was learned for me personally through the experience of genuinely doing it the hard way and getting it wrong and working 7 days a week and all that kind of thing. And to your point of like the turning point, I was about 27 at the time. So bearing in mind, I started that business at 19 and I was still slogging my guts for it. I was still working all hours, Monday to Sunday. I'd put on a bit of weight. Like, I wasn't looking after myself, and a relationship that I'd been in for almost 7 years just completely ended in a really horrible way. And that was, for me, I think if I go back to like being 18, 19, my dream was by the time I'm 30, I'll be married with children and I'll be really wealthy and all those kind of, I guess, naive 18-year-old goals. I kind of thought, wow, turning 30 is just around the corner. And I'm the opposite to all of that. I've got a business that doesn't make me happy. I work more hours than you would in a job. For less money.
Less money.
And now the person I thought I'd get married to and have children with, we're no longer together. And I'm actually feeling really weird as a nearly 30-year-old going on dating apps, and because they didn't exist when I got in that relationship. And now it's this whole new world. Yeah. And I was just like, wow. And I went for, it was probably about 10 months where I went from one extreme to the other. So the first extreme was work really hard, be super ambitious. I didn't have much of a social life. To the flip side, which is like, wow, I've missed out on those years where everybody else is out partying and going to uni. I didn't do that. So I literally was just like drinking alcohol every night. I was partying all the time and I was really, really low. And I think like the lowest it got, I remember at one point just feeling so sad and so empty and low and unhappy. I remember thinking, I don't care if I don't wake up tomorrow. It was never like, I'm going to attempt to take my life, nothing like that. But it was just like, whatever, this life's shit, it's awful. And it's really weird talking about that now because it just doesn't feel like me. It's such...
Would you say that in that space you felt lonely, or was it more, you just didn't have any direction or purpose, that you didn't really know what to do next?
All of it. I mean, I definitely felt lonely. I felt really... I think now, just connecting the dots, I've been thinking a lot recently. I know there's a lot of conversation around neurodivergence. I know there's a lot of people saying, oh, everybody's got ADHD and all that kind of stuff. But I think I've always felt like I just think differently to everybody else. And when that kind of, my business wasn't making me happy, I'm now single. And I was just like, what is wrong with me? Like, and it's so exhausting living in my brain. And so I just felt tired. I felt exhausted. I felt lost. I felt like, what is success? I've no idea, because I thought I was chasing the metrics. I've worked really bloody hard. I've tried to be a good person. I've been super ambitious. I've tried to make good money to be able to look after my family and do something beyond the norm. And actually, I feel the opposite of success. Yeah. And that began the journey of really, eventually, it wasn't a overnight thing. It was about 10 months of, I guess, wallowing, I guess, feeling down, getting pissed, whatever, to then go, there was just a turning point where I was like, I can't feel like this anymore. This has been too long. And there's only me that can actually get me out of this. Yeah. And that's where the like self-development stuff started. And basically that from that, the idea of my podcast was born. So this was like 2018, 2019. And it was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually sit down with people every week and have conversations about what success really is? Because what I thought it was isn't working for me. I now need to learn. And bearing in mind, like back when I started at 19, there wasn't podcasts. You know, this is 16 years ago nearly.
Yeah.
It wasn't podcasts, mentors, online courses, memberships, all this. I mean, there might have been, but I didn't know of them. So these are all things we like take for granted now if we start a business today. But I hadn't grown my business with any of those resources. And when I decided to start my podcast, not many people had podcasts or knew about them back in 2018. So it was just this idea of how cool it would be to just be able to interview people for an hour every week and share those lessons with anybody that wants to listen. And that was literally the start of the business that I have today, Success School.
So I want to just go back to something that you said there, which is and I'll paraphrase rather than quote you because I can't remember exactly what you said, but you basically said you'd fought for ages for the success that you thought is what success is, defined by, I assume, society and what we think it should be. And actually you got all of the things which on paper should tick the box of you being successful, which then should equal happiness and fulfillment and all the things. And in fact, you felt empty and the opposite of what you thought. Now, I can resonate with this loads because in like sort of 2022, 2023, I went through a very similar situation. I had more money than I'd ever seen. Like the business was flying, our property investments were going well, the online coaching company was growing, my investments were like, the market was booming, like everything was going brilliantly. I'd never had more money. And yet I felt completely lost and empty. And I remember we had we set a goal to do £100,000 in a day once, like in an 8-hour billing day. And we hit 99,000 and something. And it was incredible achievement. Like I was really fucked off that I didn't hit 100.
So
but I remember feeling really empty about it. And I remember thinking like, well, okay, cool, that's fine. We've done nearly 100,000, but like, now what? And I was constantly chasing this now what? And I think actually when I look back on that period of time, I felt very similar to you, is that I'd chased this, what I thought I should be doing in order to achieve fulfillment through success and money and wealth and all the things. And in fact, I got there and realized I was so disconnected from it from a human being perspective. Actually, it wasn't really about the money at all. It was about me, my happiness, my health, my relationships. And the balance of success really comes in the line of finding a equilibrium between all of those things, as opposed to success always meaning materialistic money, cars, watches, holidays, all the things. And actually it took me, I sat in a period of time where I just felt miserable. Like I was doing the job because I had to do the job because I'd committed to it and people had paid me. And I was like on this cycle, but I was really unhappy in it. And actually that took quite a long time to realize that I was unhappy in it, to be able to then start to put things in place to change it. But I wonder how many people out there strive to goals that have been set because it's what they think they should do, right, as opposed to what they've actually sat and pondered, what do I want? And with your business, obviously you coach a lot of people in this zone. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I always say self-development starts with self-awareness, and self-awareness is grown from self-reflection. Like, we have to take that time to pause, to reflect, and I'm going through this right now. I think more in my personal life. Like, I've just been loving my business, and it's giving me so much fulfillment and so much dopamine and so much joy that I'm really finding normal life dead boring, and I'm really finding it hard to have that yin to the yang and actually switch off, because I'm exhausted and burnt out. It's a very different thing to back when I was 27 and I was exhausted and not like great turnover, not great profit. They were very different days. Today it's still I've got to try and figure out, how to find ways to enrich my life beyond business a little more. And that in itself is my self-reflection piece right now. But to your point, I think we just end up being given a blueprint for life by somebody else. without actually reflecting on what actually fulfills us and makes us happy. And if we're not careful, that can lead to us being very unhappy. And I think that's what kind of happened to me back then. But really interestingly, just this last week, I had one of those moments, what you're talking about, which is where actually you are achieving success in business and financially, but it's leaving you with these strange emotions. So if I think back, there's a couple of key moments in my life that were like this. One was I did a bodybuilding competition. And growing up,
I hoped we'd get to this as a topic because I remember having this is a good conversation.
Yeah, because you would have known me. I think probably when we met, I'd just done it a year before or something like that. Right. So I kind of, when I was younger, I've always struggled with my body image and my weight and all that kind of thing. And I think in my mind, to a point of like people chase goals and then it doesn't bring them what they thought. I thought having big muscles and abs and all that kind of thing, I'd be like, I am now the man. I am super confident. I have arrived. I just thought that would be the thing, you know, like, I don't know. I think I probably did my first mood board when I was 16, 17. And it was, you know, you had the big house, the beautiful family, the flash cars. And then there's a topless guy in the gym with the big body.
All
like
the abs in the world.
Abs, the men's health physique.
Doing one arm pull-ups, living the dream.
All that. In fact, that was the exact picture. And I remember then, you know, starving myself essentially, overtraining, and being obsessive for this competition, getting on that stage, literally dripping in really dark fake tan. They definitely put too much on me. It was ridiculous. And feeling super depleted and exhausted and thinking internally, I feel no different. I'm just Matt. I'm still me with that same voice in my head, having chats with myself about the day. And yeah, I'm right. I'm proud. I've done something, whatever. But it wasn't that big, we've arrived moment. And the other one was when I had my first £10,000 month, when it was one of the loneliest I felt again. I was like, I'm single. I felt like, I remember thinking, I can't really celebrate this with anybody because
you've not got someone to share it with.
I haven't got it to share it with. And a lot of the people that I talk to on a daily basis are my clients paying me, or they're my staff that work for me. You know, or like my parents, I didn't want to like gloat because they were still working really hard in their job for a lot less money. It just felt this really weird thing. And then bringing it forward to this last week. So we've just done our most successful launch, which was close to £200,000 in 7 days. It was just short of 190 in 7 days that we've done in revenue. That is not in my bank account right now, just to be clear. But we did that. And I think on some level, I'm still chasing those goals to make my family proud and all that kind of thing. And the moment was that when we were still in that launch, I think we'd done about 130 grand at that point. It was a Sunday. And I went to my nan's house. My nan's like 92. And that's, again, I think like on some level, there's this thing of I need to achieve things while my nan's still around and, you know, all that, those kind of thoughts. And I just said, we were talking about other stuff. And then I just thought, right, I'm going to tell her now. And I just thought, I just said, Nan, just so you know, in my business, we've had this huge successful launch and we've done like nearly £130,000 so far in the last 5 days or whatever it was at the time. And she just went, oh, did you? She went, oh, it definitely makes you more money than Take That thing did then, doesn't it? And then she went, hey, I tell you what, Take That are on tour at the moment, aren't they? I'd love to see them. And I just thought, like, I've waited for so long to be able to say I've done something like that. And actually, and we know this intellectually, our family don't really care. Like, the ones that actually love us, they love us with or without money. And even though I knew that intellectually, and I didn't say it, and we didn't continue that conversation, we just then talked about Take That, the circus tour. But it was one of those moments where I was like, wow, emotionally, even though I knew it intellectually, emotionally, it does once again leave you feeling a little bit empty and a little bit like, you know, so it's an interesting one. And at the same time, I think I'm far enough now in my, if you want to call it self-development journey or whatever, to be like, it's not like, oh God, I've lost all purpose. Like, I understand it. I can compartmentalize it. Yeah. You know, it's not chasing money for approval, even though on some level there still is a bit of me doing that. The bigger picture, it isn't that. And I am able to detach from it. But yeah, it is now about really being clear about what are the other things that enrich your life beyond just chasing those goals.
You just said there, making money for approval. And I think that's quite a important sentence to just pause on, because I think for a lot of people, certainly for me, so I'll speak from my own experience, and I'm sure people listening to this will resonate with this, but I, similarly to you, have my whole life struggled with my self-image, not really from anyone else's perspective, but entirely from how I see, how I feel, all of that stuff. And actually the drive in me to build businesses, to sell businesses, to build houses, like all the things that I do, I think it took me until I was in my 40s to realize that drive comes from the need to have approval, or probably till my late 30s, I'd imagine. It's not so much now, because I think turning 40, I started to think, oh, do you know what? Fuck other people's opinions. I'm just going to live my life for me. But I think there'll be people listening to this who, at a certain degree, are fighting to have more money, have more things, build businesses, have good careers. Because not everybody listening to this is entrepreneurial. There's lots of people listening to this are in jobs, and that's great as well. But I think sometimes we forget to stop and ask the question of why. Like, why are we actually doing it? And money for the sake of other people's approval and validation is, when I speak to clients and I say, why are you doing it? And they say, well, actually, when we really drill it, it is for other people's validation. It is for other people's approval, external validation and external approval, whilst also feeling empty and miserable. So what's your advice to people who are listening to this thinking, fuck, that's me. You're talking directly to me, but I don't know how to adjust this. I don't know how to change it up. How do I start to think differently, feel differently, start to have different purposes identified? Like, what's your advice to those people? Because I think that's quite an important thing.
My advice would be different for different people, because we have different drivers. But as a general advice, if I just reflect on advice to myself, it would be, do it for the wrong reasons. And I know that sounds controversial, but here's the reason why. Because I can be told something a million times that makes logical sense. But as a human being that is emotional, because we are all human feeling beings, nothing will teach you lessons more than the experience of doing it. So, for example, now if we look at those things that we spoke about, people used to say, money doesn't make you happy. I had to do that 10K month, and then, similarly this last week, doing the 180 odd K in a week, I have to do that to go, oh yeah, it actually doesn't. The standing on stage, bodybuilding, I had to get those abs. I had to grow those muscles. I had to put that work in to stand on that stage with the tan dripping off my head to go, oh yeah, I still feel like Matt inside.
Yeah.
Right? So some of us, that's how we learn. People can tell you to the blue, and this is why having good mentors, good support, and communities and accountability is really valid, because when you have those moments, you've got the people to talk it through with and to pick you back up. And that's what I didn't have back when I was 27 per se. I didn't have other people with experience in these fields. I now do, and I now do that for my clients. But some of us, we have to learn through doing. We have to learn through experience. Nothing will teach you quite the same as a mistake or a failure or a lesson learned from experience. So I think that's part of the parcel, is you can listen to these podcasts, we can inspire you, we can tell you what you should be doing. But if on some level there's still a part of you going, but I do want to show those bullies at school, and I do want to, and whatever that narrative is, go and do it so you can show yourself, actually, this isn't the thing. Now you can figure out what the thing really is.
What the thing is. Interesting. This is interesting advice. So you're building your business now, right? And you're currently on a trajectory of growth, which is really exciting. I obviously follow you online, have done for ages since we met. What do you think the biggest challenge is when it comes to building a business, when it comes to thinking about money specifically, either personal money or money in the business? Like, what do you think your biggest challenges are, like in the way you think about it?
So my personal ones, if I be kind of really open about this, is when I've started to realize I can make money, I've been less specific about the numbers, because if I take a risk and we lose money, it's like, I'll just figure out a solution quickly to make it again. And so there's an element for me, like my journey this last year or so is about adulting, being a little bit more responsible rather than that kind of scrappy entrepreneurial, I can just hustle it out, I can just come up with something. And my thing has been evolving that now, because it did lead us to some really bad cash flow issues, to the point where just recently we're making more money than we've ever made. And actually, I personally wasn't able to pay myself for a few months. I actually had to get a business loan to help with cash flow. You know, and I think it's important to talk about this because we see those huge wins online. Naturally, a lot of my friends, I've had friends who are doing 3-4 million a year and things like that, saying they went through a patch like that last year and they had to get a loan and they're paying 10K a month back loans, you know, just part of their expenses and things like that. Yeah. And I think it's really important we openly talk about this, because we see so many of the I've just made this, I've just made that, and it's always revenue figures. It always includes VAT. You know, it always includes people on payment plans that aren't paying you for weeks. Yeah, but let's not talk about VAT.
It drives me insane.
Let's not do. But that is. You know, and I get it. It's showing the best version and the best angle of what we've achieved, and we have achieved that in sales, and that is a great thing to celebrate. And we should talk about the other angle. And so that for me was like, as we're getting bigger and we're making more and there's more responsibility, we need to be more strategic. We need to plan the finances. I've always been strategic in what we're doing with the business that year, but money I've thought we can always play around with based on what I do that week and so on. And now it's been basically more mature as a business owner, being more strategic with cash flow. And I again learned that the hard way with an event we did a few months ago, where we actually lost £60,000 on an event that was epic and people loved, but then created major cash flow issues.
Do you follow the same new adulting rules that you have in your cash flow business in your personal money?
Exactly the same problems. I just spend. I have no fear of consequences. If the money goes down, I'll just bring it back up from somewhere. And because the other thing is I've got two businesses. So like there's two places I'm doing this. Well, I'll pull some out of that. Then I'll pay myself extra that month. Like, because that entrepreneurial hustle is all I've known since being 19. I've never had to budget where you get a job and you will get a set wage that month and you have to think, will I have enough at the end of the month? I've always just been like, if we don't have enough, what are we going to sell today? What will we do to make the money? You know, I've always just been, I guess the upside of that is solutions focused. We find a way. The downside is almost there's no consequences. And then there was, and then suddenly it's too big to just hustle your way out of, and we've had to get a loan and things like that.
Interesting. So do you invest money, Matt, or are you fully focused on business growth at the minute?
Yeah, so I have a financial advisor and we invest in like the whole stocks and shares. I pay myself pension from my businesses. I've got like some gold and silver. So yes, but this we're literally at that turning point now where I'm about to like have a meeting and go, right, personal wealth now needs to be a bit more of a focus. I mean, look, you know, I've invested my house that I live in, I've invested in, you know, there is definitely assets there, like investment assets. But basically, I'm just having so much fun in my business. I've always, from being 19, made a bit of money and immediately reinvested it in the business growth, not in my personal wealth. And now in my 30s, I'm like, this is silly now, Matt. As much as you enjoy that and that's fun, we have to now put more of an emphasis on your personal future and personal wealth building. Because
ultimately, you're building a business for yourself, right? That's the point, actually, is to have a business and have wealth in your life.
Yeah. And so I think when I was around, probably like 5 years ago is when I started having people on my podcast talking about personal wealth building and investing and starting going, oh, this is definitely a blind spot for me. And that was like me starting to educate myself and then get advice. So it's been about 5 years of investing to some degree, but now it's about to be like even more of a focus for me.
I think what's interesting is there's a lot of people that listen to this who've read my book, who come to our events. And I often have the conversation where they say, I wish I'd started sooner. I just didn't know how to start, because to a lot of people, starting with the stock market, buying gold, like whatever those things are, it feels like a dark art that's like just for the banks and the really clever people. And you need like a science degree to figure out the analysis to be able to actually like figure it out. And the truth is, it's accessible to everybody. If you've got £10, you can start to invest in the stock market. Like, you don't need to have a lot of money first. But I think this probably comes back to the point we talked about around like education. Even education today, although it's better, financial literacy education is starting to filter into schools. It is starting to come a topic that a lot more people are talking. There's a lot of people like me online spreading the word, trying to raise awareness, writing books, doing podcasts, all that sort of stuff. I think there's still this gap between knowing that you want to do it and knowing how to actually start to do it. And I think even if you've done a little bit of it, like you've said, you've got a bit of stock market, a bit of gold, a bit of silver, would it be fair to say that you don't necessarily have a total confidence in what and how to choose what to invest in, which gets a little bit in the way of you doing it?
100%. And the other thing is that it feels like it's ever evolving and changing, and you know what you should be investing in one year, people are saying is the worst thing to invest in the next year. So absolutely, like having that sound, solid go-to place for advice, I think it is confusing for people to know what that place looks like. And it does perfectly come back to, you know, growing up where we don't get educated on this in school, which just is ludicrous when we think about the pivotal role it plays in everybody's life. But for me, that first step was, how do I learn how to make money and just keep making it? And then it's a whole different conversation when we talk about investing and long-term wealth building. And then that's the next chapter. So yeah, I think, people like you, basically, this is where we need people that you can turn to and have those conversations and listen to content like this. But yeah, I would absolutely say still today. And also, I think here's the other thing that we should acknowledge is there's a lot of us like me that if you're not interested in a subject, it's really hard to concentrate on it.
Prioritize it.
And make it a focus.
Yeah.
So that's where then, you know, getting financial advisors or whatever, or good people that can do a lot of the heavy lifting of that and say, look, these are the basics you need to know. Like, just at least can you understand this? Because that's the other battle. People are just not interested. It's a bit like subjects at school. Some of them, you can't wait to do that class, and others, you're just like, ugh, I just want to get through it. But we have to be educated. We have to prioritize it. And that's where good mentors, good source of information is crucial.
I agree. So I'm going to come back to something you said a minute ago, and I'm going to challenge you a little bit on this because I want to know your thoughts. So you said, again, paraphrasing, not quoting, that you invest in assets now. And one of the things you've invested in is the house that you live in. So do you see the house that you live in as an asset?
Yeah, I know there's like different schools of thought on that. But effectively, it's something where I need somewhere to live anyway. And I'm investing in something that over time, the value of it will grow. Rather than, as we know, with like just renting, it's just money going out every single month and you don't have a thing at the end to sell on. So yeah, I see it as an asset. But go on, tell me why I'm wrong.
It's not so much wrong. I think I see I always see the house that you live in as a liability because it costs money. It doesn't add value to your wealth, right? So I think what a lot of people so we have a house that we live in and we pay down our mortgage and our equity grows and the market goes up. So the value of the house goes up. That's principle is correct. I completely agree with that. But I think when you actually do the numbers based on what a house costs, your interest rate on your mortgage and the maintenance of your house to keep it livable so that it's worth what it will sell for when you want to see the up. Actually, when you take into account, let's say you bought it for 100 and you sold it for 150, most people say, well, I made 50,000. Yeah. But actually in that 10 years that it's taken to do that, the interest that you've paid on the loan and the maintenance has probably cost more than 50,000. So you've actually lost money on it. And I think this is my opinion, right? And everybody sits in a different camp. Lots of people, you're either in one or the other. Yeah. I see a house you live in as a liability. It serves the purpose, like you said. It gives you a roof. It keeps you dry. It puts all your things in it and you have that. And arguably, there's some schools of thought that say that's better than renting because you've got nothing at the end of it. Some would say actually renting and putting your money to work in the stock market would be better because the stock market would pay your rent so you'd live for free. But I think there is a security in having a house that you own because it's yours and you haven't got to move. A landlord can't move you on and that sort of stuff. So I think it's just an interesting conversation that probably more people should have, because if you're just looking at the commercials of it, a house you live in could never be classified as an asset because it will always cost you money. It will never put money into your wealth unless you're going to do big renovations and add value to it and all that sort of stuff, in which case that's an investment anyway in my brain.
Yeah.
But if actually you bring in the emotional human part, actually the asset then becomes categorized as that for a lot of people because it gives you that security of a base. And I just think it's quite an interesting conversation.
Yeah. And of course you're absolutely right. And that when I'm considering it an asset, it's based on all of those things, not just the money in versus money out, because of course you're absolutely right. And it is just looking at the alternatives and going what sits best with that individual. For me, having something that I own that there's a level of security in that you don't necessarily have the same as when you're renting is 100%. Part of that emotional picture that's built of why I think it's an asset. But of course, you're absolutely right. And of course, it's a liability.
Also, I think it depends on how well you buy to start with, how well you maintain.
Right,
there's a lot of that stuff as well. Like, I live in a house that's 400 years old, and basically there's a new job every year. It's a grade 2 listed cottage with a thatched roof. It's beautiful, but it's a money pit. Like, every time anything goes wrong, it's the worst version of it that it could possibly be because it's 400 years old. So there are some houses that are very easy to maintain, in which case actually your cost, when you really run the numbers on it, it would be different. But I think this argument, which happens, I hear it online all the time. I wrote about this in my book as well. I think we have to apply a layer of human being to it when we're talking about it, because we do all need somewhere to live ultimately. And the security of having an address that you own that no one can throw you out of unless you don't pay your mortgage, obviously, I think that gives sway to the asset label. But commercially, the house you live in is always going to be a liability because it costs you money ultimately.
Yeah, 100%. And it is, and it's about lifestyle goals, it's about personal choices, isn't it? It will all determine whether that feels like a good investment or not. And if I think just like my first property that I bought was like a 1-bedroom flat for like 70 grand, and I sold it a year later for, I think, like 130 or 140. That was a huge thing, which meant I then ended up with, I think I had a 75 grand deposit on my house because we'd made so much on that in such a short space of time, which again is about timing and all the things. So like for me personally, it's felt like a good investment. I've been able to grow, and already now I'm looking at bigger properties and things, which is in a really small time frame. So but you're absolutely right, of course you are, it's your area of expertise.
I think it's interesting to get, and what I hope for this podcast is that people just get a slightly different way of thinking about various different things that they assume to be factual, but maybe like we can say, well, actually, if I think about it slightly differently, maybe I could approach my money differently. And that topic of the house you live in, asset versus liability, I just think it's one that people should ponder a little bit more.
100%.
It's just an interesting one. So, okay, Matt, if you were somebody who was listening to this podcast and, in a position where they've got a business, they're starting to, make themselves more successful than they've been, they're starting to make a bit more money, but they're noticing in themselves like sabotaging tendencies, which you and I definitely have both done and seen clients do. We're starting to make a bit of money, we're starting to hit our targets, and then we go backwards. We're starting to clear off our debt, and then something happens and it goes backwards. We're starting to see this and it goes backwards. I know there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are going through that cycle, whether it's in business or personal finances. What do you think is the part of the reasons why we sabotage when we start to meet our goals?
Two big ones, I think. One is that you've worked really hard to get there and you're now like, oh, I need to have a bit of a break, but you haven't yet hired the right people or wanted to hire the right people to keep that momentum going at the same level when you remove yourself from it. The second one is the fear of that next level of success. It's that fear of more responsibility, more things that can go wrong, more online hate or judgment, or, you know, whatever that might be for that individual. So I think they're often quite common things. It's usually one of those two, which then means you're in that cycle of getting to a level and then coming back and that kind of thing. I think overall, it's like the solution for a lot of people is it's having the right mentor to be able to get them to take a step back. And I think there's two pieces. One is the mindset and the why and understanding themselves a little bit more. But then two is the strategy and looking at it a little bit more logical and strategic. Like, how do we get to that next level and break that cycle of getting so far and then dropping back, and, you know, look at that trajectory a little bit differently. So that's where I think that outside eye, that mentor that can look at it objectively and support you through those different decisions is absolutely key for most of us.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I think I've invested a lot of money. I know you've invested a lot of money in mentors and masterminds, some of which have been excellent, by the way, some of which have been absolutely garbage. Like, we both accept that not everybody is brilliant. But I think having an outsider's perspective, even if it's in the form of a friend whose opinion you respect, or a family member whose opinion you respect, who's got maybe a bit more experience with money or, you know, hitting goals than you, like, having other people give you their opinion, provided you respect their opinion and they've got a little bit of the life that you want. Like, don't take the opinion from the bloke in the pub who's drunk 12 pints of Stella on a Tuesday night, because he's not living the life that you want, right? Take the advice and the opinion of people whose life you kind of want to have a little bit of. That outsider's perspective, I think, is a really interesting thing to welcome into your brain, because I know for me, when I listen to other people's perspectives on my challenges, I'm like, I just never thought about it like that. Because we've got our own structured way of thinking based on our own scripts, based on our own upbringings and inner narrative and belief systems and limiting stuff and all the things. Sometimes you get someone who's just got a completely different script that they're running in their head, and they just go, yeah, but what about if you did it like this? Or what about that? And you think, that's really obvious, but I didn't think about it. So I think...
Yeah, and I think it is quite often obvious, quote unquote, because it's often simple, but it's just that we weren't thinking in that way. So there's a phrase that I've said for years, which is simplicity scales, complexity fails. And it's just that reminder I always encourage my clients to come back to, like, are we overcomplicating this? Because quite often the answer to the problem is in simplification. You're trying to do too many things at the same time, and what ends up happening is you do loads of things well or average instead of one thing outstanding that can really scale. So that's why the other thing I always say is do less, better. Like, stop doing loads of things well, do one thing at a really high level, and that's where you can then really put gasoline on that growth and keep moving forward, rather than the kind of, like you say, a bit more up and down, and we can break that cycle.
Great advice, I think. So, Matt, I can talk to you about this stuff all day long.
Let's do it. Let's really clear the diary. Let's just keep going.
The decks. So, at the end of every podcast, we always ask a question that's come from a previous guest. And then we're going to ask you for a question to give to our next guest. So the question that was left by a previous guest was, how much money is enough money?
And such a great question. I think that number can change. I think dependent on, because every time you earn more money, your lifestyle changes, and just generally growing, like, in life, the impact you want to make, the legacy you want to leave, whatever that thing is for that individual. I don't think, like, we should just stay stuck for our life with any of these questions. It should be an ongoing evolution. So I think what that comes down to is constant or regular self-reflection, because what you wrote as a number a year ago might be wildly different. And to give you like one quick example, our biggest launch early last year was a launch that we did £42,000 in a week. And then fast forward this year, it's nearly 190,000 in 7 days. And like, based on where I'm at right now, if we'd have only done 40,000, I would have been like, this is the biggest failure ever. Whereas last year it was the biggest success ever in just 12 months. So our money mindset and everything will evolve as our experiences evolve. I think what's crucial is that number can change, but and we've touched on it in this session, it's the why. What would that next level of money add? What would it bring? How would it change your life? And is the pursuit of that next level worth it?
Worth it.
That's the key thing.
What a really good thing to say for the end of this. Is the pursuit of that next level worth it? This is something that no one ever said to me, ever. And I reached a point in my business where the pursuit of that level of success wasn't worth it for me. And I'm actually happy that I've gone backwards in words. Like if you look at my accounts, the numbers are lower now, but I am happier now. Right. So actually I see that as progress. But if you are just assessing me on my money and how much money I've made and profit and loss and all the things that go with company's house stuff, actually the pursuit of that level of success wasn't worth it for me because it was non-stop. Because I live similarly to you, a very public life on social media predominantly, and we sell in that space, it's toxic as fuck. And when someone wants to come for you, it's awful. I know you know that personally as well, same as me. And honestly, Matt, it just wasn't worth it to be waking up in the morning in a state of fucking misery before I'd even opened my phone, knowing that someone on there was going to come for me today. Like, it just wasn't worth it. I'd rather have less money and more happiness than have all the money in the world and be in a state of unhappiness, unfulfillment is being unfulfilled. Like, is the pursuit of the level of success that you're going after actually worth the sacrifices and the lifestyle that it's going to give you? And I think in a podcast where we talk about money and having more money and making more money and investing more money and, ultimately trying to enjoy money, I think it's really important that we never forget that we've got to know that pursuit is worth the what we get at the end of it is what we actually want and not bullshit.
and again, I think it probably for most people, like, they'll know what that looks like from the experience, just like you're saying there, of going to that next level and going, actually, this isn't worth it.
Thanks.
So now I can really confidently, just as you are now, say, I'm happy earning less this year. Not from an ego perspective, like, I've been to those higher levels, I've seen what it takes, and it's not worth it to me. So actually, now I know my enough number. And I don't think we can actually confidently know our enough number just writing it down on paper, plucking it out of thin air. Even like going through, like, this is how much for my bills, this is how much I'd want left over. Even when you've done that, you won't really know until A, you get there, but B, you understand the pursuit to get there. So I think it's regularly checking in, it's regularly coming up with those goals, but you really will find it through the experience of going for it. And then you can course correct and adjust from that experience, not just from logically writing it down.
Interesting. Thank you very much. So leave us a question for our next guest. What would you like us to ask?
So it follows on perfectly from that, because we're talking about money. We're talking about what money can bring you, can bring with it for good and for bad. And if we go back to me at 19, I thought, or even younger, like, being rich and famous will solve all the world problems. I thought that was the journey to success. And as we know, it wasn't quite what I thought it was. And I think that's so common for so many people. So I think the obvious question that I should leave us with is the same question I always ask on my podcast, which is very simply, what is your personal definition of success?
Great question. I will make sure we get that asked. Matt, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you. It's been too long, and we should definitely catch up a bit more often next time. We'll maybe do in person at some point. That'd be good fun.
That could be a goal. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. Thank you so much for your time and for your very honest account of everything that's been going on. And I will speak to you soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Matt, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Best thing is get me on Instagram. Matt Hall Official is my main platform, is where I hang out. come and get me there, come and connect. And I always say, like, if you've listened to this and there's been anything that's resonated, whatever, genuinely do take a moment, just drop us a DM. I think so often we can listen to podcasts just passively and then move on to the next episode or do something else without remembering, like, these people, we are real people, that there might be a collaboration opportunity, there might be something we can help each other with, we might work together. Like, drop me a DM if there's any synergy there, or equally, if you thought I was a bit of a knob, you could just go, great episode, and you're a bit of a knob. That's cool too. But it's always nice, isn't it, just to hear from people who've actually spent time listening to us. So do connect with me, Matt Hall Official on Instagram.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Matt. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for getting to the end of the podcast episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I just wanted to take this opportunity to remind you that the weekly Money Mechanics newsletter is available to you completely free. This is a newsletter I'm going to send out every week to just give you some ideas around what's happening in the markets, what's happening at a global level, what's happening at a lot more local level, so that you can better understand what you can do with your money to make it work for you for the future. I'm also going to share in the newsletter what I'm doing in my own portfolio, just to give you some insights into what my ideas are, why I'm making the decisions that I'm making, in the hope that it will help you to make those decisions in your own portfolios as well. All you've got to do is find the link that's with this episode, hit the link and subscribe, and that newsletter will start to come out to you every single week. I'd also really love to take this opportunity to invite you to drop me a review. I love the opportunity of getting to share these podcast episodes with you. It really helps me to better understand how we can do the best job that we can here at Money Mechanics if you tell us your feedback. So drop us a review, tell us the sort of guests that you want, talk to me and connect with me on Instagram, talk to us on YouTube, wherever you are hanging out. Tell us how you're finding it, and we can make this the very best podcast it can be. Thank you again for being such a valued listener. I appreciate you all, and I'll speak to you soon.